One of the real advantages to where Barbara and I have lived for the last 13 years is the incredibly wide selection of places to eat out. Within just a few miles of us, there are hundreds of dining establishments of every imaginable variety. So many different kinds and so convenient that we had no choice but simply to give up cooking altogether and go out to eat almost every meal just to patronize these establishments. There are so many of them, though, that sometimes we don't even notice when one closes or when a new one opens or when one changes hands, unless it's one of the ones that we eat at on a regular basis. But I know that in a small town, it's completely different. Back in the 90s, way back in the 90s, we lived in Jacksonville, which is not really that far from here and probably not that different. And I know that in Jacksonville, when a new restaurant opened up, it was a big occasion. It was the whole town celebrated. And so when a place called John's Southern Kitchen opened its doors, we all wondered about what it was going to be like because the owner had no previous restaurant experience at all. He had retired and moved to the Jacksonville area and then just decided one day on a whim, I think I'll open a restaurant. And he did. And he served great food. And it was at reasonable prices. And it was a friendly atmosphere. So pretty soon he had a going concern on his hands. When you walked in the door at John's Southern Kitchen, you felt like the people who worked there were genuinely glad that you came. Not just because you were a paying customer, but because you were you. They were glad to see you. We would eat there once or twice a week at least, sometimes more. And on Sunday lunch after church, you were lucky to get in the door. In fact, the really great news for us then was that the preacher in those days, I was working at a college there, the preacher started shortening his sermons so that we could beat the Baptists to John's Southern Kitchen. Then one day, for some reason that none of us knew, John sold his restaurant. Nobody understood why. He seemed to be making money hand over fist, and everybody in town loved him because they loved his restaurant. I don't know. Maybe he just wanted out. Maybe he was overwhelmed by it. Maybe it was too much for him. But somebody bought it, and the new owner sank a ton of money into the place. He fixed up the outside and decorated it real nicely, and he put one of those signs out front. They're like a sign and a trailer combined, and they have wheels on them, and you can put letters and put a message on there, and it had blinking lights and everything. And it said, I bet you can guess what it said. It said, under new management. Well, when grand reopening day finally rolled around, it was like a holiday in Jacksonville. We couldn't wait to get in there. And so we all went eagerly to try it out. The outside, we noticed, was a lot fancier. It was really upscale for Jacksonville. But on the inside, it looked basically the same. So we thought, this is going to be just like it's always been. Many of the same people were still working there. But it wasn't the same. The quality of the food had gone down. The prices had gone up. And the service was lousy. Nobody seemed to be very happy about working there anymore. And it showed. The people on the serving line, they didn't seem very interested in being of help. They didn't seem happy to see you. The place closed its doors for good in less than 3 months. In his second letter to the church in Corinth, Paul speaks about the transformation that takes place in our lives when we come to know Christ. Here's what he says. If anyone is in Christ, there is a new creation. everything old has passed away. See, everything has become new. Well, what Paul said then, 2,000 years ago, is just as true today. Because of our relationship with Christ, we have been made new. Now, it may not seem that way to you. It may not have happened all at once in some dramatic way. It may have happened to you over the course of a lifetime. But you are who you are today, and you live the life you live today because of your relationship with Christ. Now, in a lot of ways, we're still the same people we always were. We still look the same. We still sound the same. We still have most of the same habits and the same likes and dislikes. And so the outside, the external details remain largely unchanged. But on the inside, we're different. We have been made new. The way we think has changed. The way we feel has changed. The values on which we make our decisions and in which we live our lives are all there because we are Christian people. It's like we've been placed under new management. And our new manager is none other than Jesus Christ. But when Christ reopens our lives, for each of us, when he had that grand reopening day for us, the changes weren't merely cosmetic, and the quality was definitely better instead of worse. You know, when I used to read this passage, I read it for years, and I thought I knew exactly what it meant. I thought I knew just what Paul was talking about, and I thought he was talking about just something that happened to us as individual believers, as individual Christian disciples, that we were made new on the inside, but that the world and everything else around us, nothing happened to it. It just remained pretty much the same. But, you know, I found out I was wrong about that I'd been reading it and understanding it wrong. Not too long ago, I literally woke up in the middle of the night with a profound, though very obvious, insight into this verse. Paul says, if anyone is in Christ, there is a new creation. Everything old has passed away. Everything has become new. I knew that's what it said, but what I was hearing was, if anyone is in Christ, then he is a new person or she is a new person. It isn't the individual who changes, or at least not just the individual who changes. Creation itself changes. It isn't just our way of looking at the world that changes. The world itself changes because of our relationship with Christ. It is as if when we are joined to Christ, whatever part of the world we touch is placed under new management because Christ is living through us. So the people we meet, the things we do, the activities that are important to us, they are made new because Christ places them and us under new management. I was so excited when I discovered that that's what Paul was really saying, and then I realized it was one of those moments like a light went on. I said, I know why that sounds so familiar, and I know why I responded to it the way I did. Because at the time, I'd been doing a lot of studying of the book of Revelation. And I was studying it because I found that Christian people tend to almost all misunderstand that book. They're confused by it, they're disturbed by it, they don't understand what it means. And those who think they know what it means tend to focus too much attention on the strange symbols, or they try to figure out the numbers in it, or they try to say, well, this and such world event or this political figure is who was being talked about in that book. We got a dose of that last month in a very big way. Remember the crackpot Harold camping? who said, I've counted up the numbers and I've done the math in the Bible, and the world is going to end on May 21st. Are you sure about that? Yes, I am sure about that. Sell everything you have. The world is ending on May 21st. Didn't you get it wrong 17 years ago, Mr. Camping? Yes, I did, but now I got it right. The world is going to end on May 21st. You know what? The world didn't end on May 21st. Jesus didn't come back. There wasn't a giant earthquake that rolled all the way around the globe and destroyed the globe. People like Mr. Camping are too busy looking for clues that point to the end of the world, or they're too busy counting up all the numbers, or they're too busy trying to match up people with who is the beast, that they miss the wonderful message of hope that John had in that book. And this is that message. When all the battles are finished, when all the enemies are vanquished, when even death itself is no more, God is going to open up a new business. God is going to create a new heaven and a new earth. Because just remodeling the old one isn't good enough. You can't just slap on some new paint and put up a new sign out front. God's plan for us and for His creation cannot be accomplished simply by sprucing up the old.